Hey, it's Greg from the Code Creative. Hoisting.
Hoist.
Is it just one of those annoying things you have to know for your JavaScript interview? Well, in my opinion, if you really want to learn JavaScript, it's actually a super important concept that's going to help you understand how JavaScript works under the hood. And definitely, it'll help you pass your interview as well. So here in my JavaScript file, as you can see, we're declaring a variable, bestSpiceGirl, on line 1. And we're setting it equal to a string of baby, who indeed is my favorite Spice Girl. And then on line 2, we're logging bestSpiceGirl to the console. And if I switch to the console in my browser, as you might expect, baby gets printed out when the code is run. But going back to the code now, what if we swap these two lines? So what if we put that console.log first? So if we save, and now we go to the console, well, look at that, we get undefined. Why do we see undefined rather than getting a reference error? Remember, undefined is an actual value in JavaScript. It's not an error. What this indicates is that JavaScript seems to know about this variable, bestSpiceGirl, on line 1, even though the actual variable wasn't declared until line 2. Think about it. If JavaScript didn't know about bestSpiceGirl on line 1, well, we would have seen a reference error in the console when line 1 was run. This right here is hoisting in action. Let's take a closer look at this super simple code now and really get a conceptual understanding of how hoisting works. The first basic thing to understand is that the V8 engine, in this case, which is Google Chrome's JavaScript engine, does not run this code in a single top-down pass. There's actually a compilation step which occurs first before this code is executed. And during this compilation step, all the variable declarations in the code, such as this var bestSpiceGirl on line 2, are found and given a little space in memory. Also, they're added to their particular enclosing lexical scope in which they reside. In terms of JavaScript, we have a global scope, but we also have a function scope and we have block scope. In this case, we're not in a function or a block, but rather we're in the global scope. So to review so far, during this compilation step which happens, bestSpiceGirl, which is the variable identifier, is going to be given a little space in memory and added to its enclosing lexical scope, which as we said in this case is the global scope. After this compilation is done, then our code will be executed line by line. Let's do a walkthrough of this line-by-line code execution. So first, on line 1, we see console.log bestSpiceGirl. Now I ask you, does JavaScript know about bestSpiceGirl at this point in time? Well, yes it does, because of that compilation phase. However, the value of bestSpiceGirl at this point is undefined. And this is because variable declarations start off with an initial value of undefined at runtime. It isn't until line 2 that bestSpiceGirl is actually set equal to the string of baby. So now you should understand that if I copy and paste this console.log on line 1 to line 3 as well, well now if we go to the console, we'll see undefined first, followed by the string baby. Now, contrary to what people often think, hoisting doesn't actually switch our code around, and it doesn't move anything to the top of the file. Hoisting is really a metaphor for what happens during this multi-step process. This multi-step process in which a compilation phase occurs first, followed by the code execution phase. Now let's try something. Let's get rid of this third line, and let's replace the var on line 2 with the let keyword. Here's the question. Does hoisting work the same with let as it does with var? Well, let's look at the console, and what we see now is that we're getting a reference error. So then, can we say that let doesn't get hoisted? Well, no, it does. That is, it's given some space in memory during compile time, and it's assigned to its enclosing lexical scope. However, here's the difference. Let, unlike var, is not initialized undefined at the start of runtime. With let, as well as const, initialization occurs at the time that the line it resides on is encountered and evaluated, which in this case is line 2. Here's a little fun trivia to blow your friend's mind grapes. This period of time before let gets initialized actually has a name. It's referred to as the temporal dead zone. or TDZ for short. So here with this let getting initialized to the string baby, if I now comment out line 1, and instead I do my console.log on line 3, well, we now see baby in the console. And let's say that we declared best by squirrel on line 2, but we didn't explicitly assign it a value. So we just did let best by squirrel. Well, now if we look in the console, we can see that we're getting undefined. And this is because by the time line 3 has been encountered, best by squirrel has been initialized undefined. Now let's get rid of this console log. And let's say, what if we had a function called getBestSpiceGirl? And inside of this function, we said console.log bestSpiceGirl. And then we declared a var bestSpiceGirl inside of the function. And we set it equal to a value of sporty. And let's set this bestSpiceGirl on line 2. Let's set it back to var bestSpiceGirl equals baby, as we had it earlier. So now if we come down here and we invoke getBestSpiceGirl, what do you think we'll see in the console? Well, let's save and let's go take a look. And here you can see we get undefined. Did you think that we'd see baby? Well, maybe you thought that since var bestSpiceGirl wasn't declared until line 5 in the getBestSpiceGirl function, that the console.log here on line 4 would reach up out of the function into the global scope and find this bestSpiceGirl on line 2 and log baby to the console. So remember that functions have their own scope. So during that compilation phase, the variable declarations within the function are going to get hoisted to the function scope. This means, just like with global scope, that when the function gets executed and we try to log out bestSpiceGirl to the console on line 4, this function scope already has its own variable identifier for bestSpiceGirl under its umbrella, so to speak. And just like with the global scope, when that console.log is executed on line 4, var bestSpiceGirl in this function scope has, at this point, been initialized with the value of undefined. If we do comment out line 5, though, then yes, that console.log will reach up out of the function into the global scope and look for a variable called bestSpiceGirl. But a function is always going to look for the variable identifier in its own scope first. Now, what if we invoked getBestSpiceGirl before the function declaration on line 3? So let's save it and let's look in the console. And here you see baby. So as you can see, function declarations get hoisted as well. And this here might be a reason to actually take advantage of hoisting. That is for code style purposes. Because function declarations get hoisted, this means that we can place our function invocations at the top of their scopes while placing all the function declarations at the bottom of their scopes. And as a stylistic choice, you might prefer to arrange your code this way. Note, however, that if we change this function declaration to a function expression, something like this, and now we save and look in the console, well, here you can see that we're getting a type error. Can you see why? Well, again, even though the variable declaration itself will get hoisted, its assignment won't occur until runtime. Therefore, when we try to invoke the function, as we're doing here on line 3, what we're really saying is invoke the value of undefined.
Absurd.
And undefined is a primitive type in JavaScript. It's not a function. This would be like doing undefined in the console and trying to invoke it. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to the channel and download my free Google search tips for developers listed in the comments below.